Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's session on post-COVID-19 perspective on supply chain by Dr. S.G. Deshmukh from Mechanical Engineering Department of IIT Delhi. I'd like to start the session with the permission of respected director, sir, by briefing the audience a bit about IMS Ghaziabad. So please allow me to share the screen.
Yeah, it is allowed. Yeah.
So let's begin the session by briefing a little about IMS Ghaziabad. As you know, that IMS Ghaziabad is a 30-year-old academic institution with 6,000 plus alumni and highly qualified faculty members. And we do have a strong base of intellectual capital and contribution to academics and practice of management through MDPs and trainings through a long period of time. Then we have been able to achieve the excellent placement record since inception, and we do have a rich academic and corporate alliance and state-of-the-art infrastructure here at IMS Ghaziabad. If you see, then we have this IMS milestone. We were established in year 1990, and we got our MBA equivalent status by Association of Indian Universities in 2001. Then accordingly, we got our ISO certification, NBA accreditation, NAC accreditation with A grade, and recently we have acquired ASIC UK accreditation in year 2017. And we are also a member of AACSB USA that we got in 2019. We offer a few programs. That one is a postgraduate diploma in management, postgraduate diploma in management international business, PGDM in big data analytics, MCA, and we recently started with executive PhD program in management in collaboration with Jamia Hamdard University, Delhi. These are a few corporate and international academic alliances the IMS Ghaziabad has. If we talk about our intellectual capital, we have the torchbearer, Dr. Alok Pandey, who is the director and member governing council of IMS Ghaziabad. Then we have Dr. Tapan Kumar Nayak, who's a professor and dean academics. And we have a rich intellectual capital that we've been able to sustain from long period of time. We have more than 50 permanent faculty members with us at IMS Ghaziabad. And the teaching pedagogy that we follow at IMS Ghaziabad is Bloom's taxonomy, which has a focus on creating, evaluating, and analyzing, rather than the old school teaching pedagogy that we follow in education sector. So it is entirely a different concept. Then we also have outcome-based teaching pedagogy, which is mixed of digital evaluation with continuous assessment. We have our online examination, that is midterm, and comprehensive end-term examination with projects, assignment, live projects, and presentations and all. And we follow a hybrid model with capability to organize all exams, both online and classroom mode, as per the course requirement. Since the lockdown happened, we were able to achieve the examination for first year, second year during lockdown, and all the students are now working as per the first year students have gone for the summer placement, and this second year students have already joined the company. And if we talk about the IMS Ghaziabad Value for Money AIU approved MBA accredited PGDM program, the top 50 students back placement with average above 9 lakhs per annum, 326 plus job offers were made from 125 companies. And the highest international package was 16.6.9 lakhs per annum, and highest domestic package was 12 lakhs per annum for this particular year. During COVID-19, IMS Ghaziabad was able to complete all the remaining syllabus of batch 2019, 2019 and 18-20 by online classes through WebEx, Zoom, Google Meet, and Institute official ERP. So all the midterm as well as the end-term examination have also been completed during the online ERP. If we come to the library at IMS Ghaziabad, we have more than 44,000 physical books available at the campus, and more than 8 lakh books from Tata McGraw-Hill and Word e-Library, and journals and other resources. If you talk about IMS Ghaziabad, boasts of one of the best library in entire Delhi NCR, with all the digital resources within the campus as well as the hostel. And placements, we have already covered it. This is a sector-wise placement PGDM report, all the major sectors which you can see here. Now we come to distinguished alumnus of IMS Ghaziabad. These three were awarded Distinguished Alumnus Award during convocation in 2019. And we are very proud of our alumnus. They've been securing highest places in the corporate and industry since a long period of time. And these are very senior alumni of IMS Ghaziabad. And state-of-the-art infrastructure with lush green campus, 7 state-of-the-art computer labs, fully automated library, and centrally air-conditioned classrooms and labs. And we have specialized language lab as well. Corporate resource center with the boardroom and all the communication facility, electronic library, elevators for specially able students, and medical facilities in campus and hostel both. Plus, all the facilities that you think of in the a particular campus that it should be required, it is there at IMS Ghaziabad. In the year 2019 and 20, we actually organized a lot of international conferences, maybe marketing, HR, and on Industry 4.0. So many distinguished guests from all over the world joined the conferences. So this was all about IMS Ghaziabad. Now I'd like to invite the torchbearer and mentor of IMS Ghaziabad, Professor Alok Pandya, Director, sir, to kindly address the session.
Sir, please unmute yourself.
Honorable Professor S.G. Deshmukh, who is the speaker and guide for us today. My colleagues, Dr. Tapan Naik, Sayub Roy, all other colleagues who are with us, and other participants, some students are also here. It gives me great pleasure. Singh Saab, aapka mobile sound mute, please. Yeah. Tapan ji, all sound mute kar dijiye, sorry. So what this is a wonderful day today. We are here to listen to Professor Deshmukh on the post-COVID perspective on manufacturing and supply chain management. In fact, post the war with China, we have been reading a lot about whether to put a curb on Chinese imports into India. China currently occupies a major space as far as imports. We export close to $17 billion worth to China, but we import goods worth around $74 billion from China. I was reading this morning that some of the key industries, like things like, say there's a pharmaceutical ingredient called 6-APA, which is a key ingredient for manufacturing penicillin. 99.7% of this ingredient of the total 1200 crore import came from China. That is almost 100%. Similarly, in printed circuit boards, close to 90%. Electronic items remaining around 70%. So what we export to China is often the iron ore, copper ore, cotton, fish, kind of things, whereas we import from China things like what you call finished goods of all variety, electronics, telecommunication, let me tell you, we won't be able to roll out 5G in India unless we get Huawei servers, which have the 5G capacity, the best in the world. In fact, majority of the Indian companies are actually bringing those servers. Now, this brings to a point as to how can we immediately replace China as a major supplier of these goods? Can India become a manufacturing hub immediately or overnight? So we have all these very vexatious questions, which are kind of troubling us, whether India can do away with China immediately, whether we can start manufacturing tomorrow, whether we'll be able to build supply chains with the rest of the world and start creating some other country, say Taiwan, South Korea, or some Japan or United States, from where these goods can be sourced. China has become factory to the world. So when Sir would speak, it will be our colleagues must note down some of the things from Sir's lecture as to how do we go about looking at post-COVID scenario. In fact, COVID has not just given us this lockdown and made us understand more about human nature during lockdown, but it has also made us understand more about economy. It has made us understand more about healthcare systems. It has helped us understand more about education systems in India, the digital divide in India, the economic divide in India. Today's newspapers and earlier newspapers have been suggesting that now, after telling us about online education for last 4 months, the government of India, one of the vice chairman of the UGC said, no longer online education is not viable in India. So, somewhere down the line, this would hurt most for the manufacturing industry, where the laborers have already gone back to their hometowns. Number one, can we start manufacturing again? If we start manufacturing again, what kind of manufacturing we do in India? Two, even if we manufacture in India, would that be of that quality? Would that be of that price? Would we not be hurting the MSMEs and manufacturing units more by manufacturing lower quality product at a higher price, because we just do not have enough capacity, or we have not done anything in last 30-40 years? We have developed our services sector to a great extent, so much so that its contribution to GDP in India is now 70%. Remaining 30% comes from agriculture and manufacturing. So after having killed manufacturing for 30 years, in fact, the Nehruvian policy of import substitution also reduced the quality of Indian goods, because they were only meant to supply to Indians. The goods were never manufactured in India to supply to rest of the world. And just imagine, China, by focusing on export-oriented manufacturing, has increased its GDP per capita and overall GDP also to almost 5 times that of India in the last 30 years. Just see, from 1990 onwards, India and China were at the same level. 2020, China's per capita GDP is 5 times that of India. China moved on towards becoming a manufacturing base. India became the service base for the world. We started exporting IT-enabled services and software services, and we created large giants like Infosys, Wipro, etc., TCS, who are into software services and providing software-related products. Now, whether manufacturing is beneficial or services is beneficial is very clear from the growth of China and present state of economy in India, where almost 80 crore people are on the roads post-COVID. So manufacturing and supply chain management are one of the most important ideas. We did a major conference this year with Professor Deshmukh as one of our chief guests, and where we focused on how Industry 4.0 can be brought into India. But now we are back to Industry 2.0, 3.0 probably, to look as to whether Indian companies can first rebuild their basic infrastructure and then go towards robotic process automation or something like 3D printing kind of facilities and probably other things. But yes, Indian industry also is at several levels. There are Maruti Udyog Limiteds who have robotic process automation, and there are a large number of suppliers. In fact, the first person to oppose a ban on imports from China was the Maruti chairman himself. He said, we don't depend on China, but all our suppliers do. Same thing, even Bajaj also said the same thing. Auto components for 40 to 50% actually come from China for these manufacturers. So I sincerely feel that as Sir would speak and give us some ideas, we'll get some research ideas out of it. And colleagues in at Institute of Management Institutes, Ghaziabad, would build upon whatever Sir says and start doing some positive research, because we are also located in a manufacturing hub called Ghaziabad. Remember, Ghaziabad and Noida gave the maximum sales tax as well as maximum GST to the state of UP. And they need solutions which only we can provide. So, Sir, with these words, I welcome you, and over to Sai to invite Sir for the lecture.
Thank you so much, sir. Now I'd like to welcome our Dean Academics, Dr. Tapan Kumar Naik, sir, to introduce and welcome our esteemed guest for the day. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Sai. Honorable guest speaker of the day, Professor S.G. Deshmukh, esteemed director, IMS Ghaziabad, Professor Alok Pandey, a senior professor, Professor Mohammad Mateen is also there with us today, my faculty and staff colleagues, and the aspiring students. Good morning to one and all. I once again welcome you to today's webinar on post-COVID perspective on supply chains by Professor S.C. Deshmukh. So before we start, it is my honor, it is my privilege to introduce the guest speaker of the day. Professor S.G. Deshmukh is a professor in Mechanical Engineering Department of IIT Delhi. His areas of interest include manufacturing competitiveness, quality and modeling or simulation, He has more than 30 years of teaching and research experience. He is on the editorial board of several international journals. He is the editor-in-chief for OPSRAC, a Springer journal. He is a member of ISME, IIIE, ASI, and QCFI. He was the director of Atal Bihari Vajpayee Indian Institute of Information Technology and Management, Gwalior. His professional interests include operations, supply chain, and competitiveness. He has conducted several MDPs and FDPs. With this, it's my privilege once again to welcome sir and to invite Professor Deshmukh sir to start his address and enrich us with his rich experiences. So over to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Can I share my screen?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Okay. Very good morning to all of you.
Good morning, sir.
And I must thank Professor Alok Pandey. He requested me around 1 month back, and I immediately agreed. And it is really a pleasure to be once again with you, IMS, both faculty as well as student. And I would say it is really a great pleasure to be with you on this particular occasion. Everywhere there seems to be a lot of confusion. Everybody seems to be in a state of flux. We are confused what is to be done and so on. On that background, I will try to say something. Just give me 1 minute, sir. Are you able to see the presentation, sir?
Sir, it's only your desktop is visible.
Your desktop, sir, I think you should click from the file there itself.
Now, is it visible?
No, sir.
I think you go to the back to the from where you copied, sir. You just double click there itself. It'll open rather than copying it to the desktop.
Okay.
If you scroll down below to the last slide, June 27, just double click it there. I think it'll open there. We'll be able to see it. Yeah. Done.
Now visible.
Visible, sir.
Very good morning. So I must thank Professor Alok ji, and I'm also thankful to Tapan ji and Dr. Sunaina ji. They have been always great support. And I don't know whether Professor Banwat is there. He is my guru. He is not there. Okay. He is my constant source of motivation and encouragement. So basically what I will be talking is COVID, its response. Some examples I'll give, because as I said, there is a lot of negativity around. And we must also see what has been done, what are its implications to supply chain, and how do we counter the challenge of what we call it as VUCA environment. Are we really prepared, as Professor Alok ji was telling, are we really prepared to take on the global competition? If so, what are the necessary ingredients for saying that we are really prepared, and so on. As we all know, COVID-19, a small virus, it has set the entire globe into turbulence and extreme chaos. Everything is affected. The political system, the economy, the business, we as individual, our psychology, our sociology, everything is affected by this COVID-19, and supply chains are really no exception. And if you look at a typical supply chain, it is really a chain. It is a network of so many entities, right from the suppliers of the supplier, manufacturer, where there is a value addition, where we add some value, we produce some product, tangible physical product. Then we try to distribute, maybe through a extensive network of distributor, retailers, and finally the item may go into the hands of customers. And in a typical supply chain, what we say, there are three important flows: material flow, information flow, and at the end of the day, what matters is the money flow. And thanks to COVID, all these three flows are being affected, whether it is the manufacturing space, the storage, the logistic function, retailing function, and so on, and ultimately affecting the cash flow of a company. So everything has been severely affected by COVID-19. And what we say, that the environment is characterized by what is called as VUCA. There is a extreme degree of volatility in the environment. There is also great degree of uncertainty. There is also great degree of complexity, and so on. And we really do not know in which direction to move or what should be our step to counter this. So when we say volatility, it is because of the extreme dynamics which are in the environment. Again, thanks to the COVID, the speed of change has been really rapid. Initially, we thought, especially in India, we thought that it is not going to affect us. And it took some time to realize that COVID phenomena is really at the doorstep, knocking our door very vigorously. And the effect of this is our perception about risk, our perception about the flux in the market, and a huge degree of instability which has been thrown upon. Again, thanks to COVID. Similarly, the uncertainty comes because we really do not know what to predict, how to predict, and there were many potential surprises and many unknown outcomes which were in the environment. For example, the question of migrant labor. I think initially our policy planners did not visualize this, but it was too late when the realization came, and by that time the damage has been done. Similarly, there is a complexity. For example, Apple also has its manufacturing facility in China, where the virus had its origin. The entire supply chain of Apple has been affected because Apple doesn't operate on its own. Apple has its suppliers. Suppliers are having their second tier, third tier suppliers. There is a whole distribution link and so on. So the entire system is very complex, and the effects are, as we have seen, the plants have been shut down. There is a huge drop in productivity and so on. The last element of VUCA is characterized by a very high degree of ambiguity. Maybe we are not able to understand the environment. There is a huge misinterpretation. And what we are saying, there is also kind of a difference, a huge difference between what we perceive as ideal and what is actual. Similarly, there is a huge degree of haziness surrounding the reality. The whole environment seems to be clouded. And in such environment, we really do not know what is going to happen. So the full environment is full of doubt, full of so-called mistrust. We do not know when the situation is going to improve and so on. But typically, since we are also an organic entity, we as human being, we as academic entity, we as corporate entity, and we also as government, we have tried to respond in our own way to counter the so-called potential effects of COVID. I'll just highlight some of these responses. For example, response from academia, as Professor Alokji was saying, immediately we got shifted to online learning. We almost completed our semester, the remaining part of the semester, using the platforms like Zoom. We are using Microsoft Teams, GoToWebinar, and so on. Similarly, on R&D front and startup front, you must all be aware that IIT Delhi has come out with an interesting startup called as eTex, and this eTex is in producing of very good quality masks. These are called as Kavach masks. It's a very innovative product. It is a multi-layer. It is reusable. Its shelf life is about 80 hours, and it is highly cost effective. A typical mask costs just about 40 rupees compared to the other brands which are available in the market. And so far, it is very interesting that 10 lakh plus masks have been sold, 5,000 jobs have been created by this startup, and it has spread to almost 26 states of India. And it has also gone abroad. It has tried to satisfy demand in 8 international markets. And this is in a small scale, an example, a very good example of Atmanirbhar self.
Sohad Banwal, please mute yourself. ये सोहाग बनवाल को म्यूट कर दीजिए और सर को तो बोल दीजिए. सोहाग बनवाल का खुला हुआ है माइक. हाँ ठीक है. अब देशमुख सर को ओपन करिए. Sir, Deshmukh sir, please unmute yourself. Sir, yeah.
We produce results in shorter lead times, given the contingency, given the demand of the environment. This is very, very interesting. Similarly, the other example, from Maruti, as sir was saying, Maruti got immediately in collaboration with AGVA Healthcare for producing the ventilators. And it is very interesting. The MOU between Maruti and AGVA, it was signed in record time of 15 days. The process was initiated on 15th of March. And by 30th of March, the Maruti got into production, and their production rate is about 250 to 300 ventilators per day. And by end of 30th of May, Maruti was able to produce 10,000 ventilators. The ventilators which are absolutely world-class. So the point is, we are also capable of producing world-class products given the right kind of ecosystem and encouragement. And similarly, the kind of demand which was thrown to us, the challenge which was thrown to us, is also interesting, that with our limited resource base, we are able to gear into production. Similarly, from the government side, government has declared the relief and rehabilitation package. There are certain economic measures, especially for MSME, and the policy interventions are basically targeted for creating what is called as Atmanirbhar, self-reliant India. And there is also an interesting example. This is called as cross collaboration. We are all aware of the online bike taxi aggregator, Rapido. And Rapido tied up with Big Basket, Big Bazaar, and other items which deliver essential good item to houses. Oyo tied up with Apollo Hospital to create the facility for COVID patients. Similarly, PhonePe has come up with a medical insurance policy called as Corona Care. And there is a fund, a very interesting fund called as ACT, Action COVID Team Fund. And this is basically for promoting very good startup ideas, especially from young people. And this is a conglomeration of venture capitalists, investors, advisors, and investment advisory firms. And they have funded almost 50 initiatives by supporting them. And what it also tells us that in this highly ambiguous and complex environment, it is not sufficient. It is not possible to search for a right kind of answer. In management, we always say that the context, the environment is very, very important. Unlike engineering, we cannot think of right or wrong answers, but the very process, the way we come together, we speak in one voice, the way we collaborate with each other, and the way we leverage our learning networks and capabilities, I think all these things are really important by which we can really counter the challenge. There is another interesting example. This is coming from Gwalior. Gwalior has one of the biggest manufacturing facilities of Godrej consumer products. They produce the Godrej soap and products like Goodnight and personal hygiene product, which were very much required during the lockdown period. The general manager got special permission from the district administration, and the entire plant was running, and the general manager himself, he was operating on the shop floor like any other worker, both from the employees as well as from the community. So this is also an interesting example. And we are all aware, example of Amul. Amul quickly adapted to the changing needs. They purchased, during this time, they purchased milk from the non-members, who were not members of the cooperative. And they also accommodated changing preferences of consumers from loose milk to packaged milk. And the entire supply chain was kept running. It is very interesting that during this period, what Amul claims is that their e-commerce sales almost doubled. Indian Railways also supported them, and this also enhanced our confidence on so-called most trusted Indian brand. And their social visibility was also very much visible. So this is very interesting example, especially for management faculty, that we must engage ourselves in preparing a good case study out of this. How a entity like Amul is able to counter, is able to keep up this. And now they're also entering into different markets, different products. Another very good example is that of Parle-G. Again, a homegrown brand, a very huge complex supply chain. There are about 135 factories spread across the country, more than 10,000 employees working directly, more than 50,000 working indirectly, 8,000 distributors, and so on. So fortunately, the entire supply chain of Parle-G was kept running. And Parle-G is a very good example. It also tries to remove what is called as divide between different shades of India. It is also an example where formal and informal economy, they converge together. Parle-G is available in big retail chains with so-called sophisticated supply chain, as well as it is also available in small villages, so-called mom and pop stores. It is also a very good diet for the both rich and poor, and especially in the migrant labor crisis, Parle-G was a good food that was available, and most of the government agencies had made good use of Parle-G as a supplement, as a food supplement for this. Another example I would like to give, this is an altogether different case. This is a plant producing the organic products. It started in 2016. It is located in a small village called as Babai. This is in Madhya Pradesh in the Bundelkhand area. And it produces the organic product, herbal based product, tulsi based product. It also produces different kinds of achars and so on. And this particular industry, this particular unit has won many export awards, and their e-commerce also has enabled their supply chain. You can also buy this online. And what is interesting, again, from management faculty point of view, that 10% of their share of profit is shared equally between the farmers and the employees. It's a very good example of a great degree of mutual dependence between the stakeholders, the farmers, employees, and the owners of the company. On the right hand side, what you are seeing is a farmer who has sold this land to the owner of this company, Mr. Kishan Gupta. Kishan Gupta was earlier working in a multinational, and then he thought that we must come out with a good product which can be sold in the international segment, and where India can boast having a huge tradition of over 5,000 years. And why not we produce quality products which can cater to the global needs? So it is a very good example of going what is called as globally vocal, again deeply sown in our own soil. There is another interesting startup. This is called as Lal10. Lal10 is a startup started by an alumnus of NITI Mumbai, and it is basically a outfit in making products which are crafted products, jute-based product, saris, etc., from different craftsmen of the country, especially from Rajasthan, Madhya Pradesh, Uttar Pradesh, Orissa. Product. So they support about 1,200 plus artisans, and they impact about 6,000 plus livelihoods. And again, the goods are exported to 18 countries. There is a huge skill base of artisan, which has been leveraged through innovative supply chain solution. And again, I can call this as a very good example of Atmanirbhar, of self-reliant India. And they are able to liaison with the craftsmen, again produce the world-class product, given the right kind of ecosystem, and so on. Now, when Professor Alokji was talking, then we're also thinking that what are the factors which are in favor of us, which we can definitely say there is a situational advantage to India. Now, as we are all aware, China is facing huge global scrutiny. All their actions are coming under scanner. Many of the countries, especially Korea, Japan, they want to shift away from China. Japan has specially earmarked about 2.2 US billion fund, especially for moving out of China. Australia is also making good moves, especially if we can see our eastern coast, we are placed in a strategic position. And if we can leverage that, that will be also good for enhancing our supply chain. And internally, we have a huge middle class base, which is basically our own consumer of the goods. And that is also interesting. Our supply chain or manufacturing solutions are also keeping in mind a huge middle class and a class which can afford to spend. So that is also a plus factor as far as supply chains are concerned. Then the so-called ease of doing business. So this index is also improved. I think now we have come to index as 63. We have come up from 73 to 63. So this is also a good development as far as the foreign investor or the way we have been looked at from the international market is concerned. Plus, we also have the traditional advantage of cost. We have advantage of having a very solid democratic system. We have good law and order situation. We have got good talent base, huge science and technology based graduates. We are a quality producer of the quality manpower. So all these factors also keep us in a very, I would say, envious position. And it will be interesting to know, Deloitte publishes a report of what is called as manufacturing competitiveness. And this is a 3-year exercise They started in 2010, 2013, and 2016. The 2020 report is yet to come. But what they have mentioned is 12 factors of competitiveness, including talent, cost competitiveness, workforce productivity, supplier network, having a good legal and regulatory framework, and so on. Now, what is interesting, the Deloitte projects that India will be number 5 as far as manufacturing base is concerned. Number 1 will be, of course, China. So we'll be positioned at number 5. Right now, we are at number 13. So what this report says, by end of 2020, we'll be positioned at number 5. And that is because of the 4 very, very important factors. That is the huge talent base, cost competitiveness, workforce productivity, and supplier network. D1 to D4, these are the encouraging competitiveness factor, which are basically in favor of India. Now, as a faculty from management, it will be worthwhile to study, to quantify, to understand the impact of each of these competitiveness factor, how it has shaped, how it is going to shape our both manufacturing as well as supply chain. And on the positive side, it is also interesting to know that about 1,000 international firms in China are likely to shift to India, and 300 companies have already started their preliminary work to shift their bases to India. And these companies includes many giants like Wistron Corporation, which is a subsidiary of Apple, Pegatron, it is a Taiwanese company, involved in assembling of iPhones. Again, an interesting proposition. Hyundai Steel and POSCO, they are iron and steel making companies. Teledyne, it is one of the giants in electronics and technology firm from USA. And pharma company like Johnson & Johnson. So all these big giants are going to come to India in a big way. Now, what is the impact of this? The impact of this, it is also going to stimulate the so-called quality movement in India. It is also going to inculcate a spirit of competitiveness among many firms in India. On the infrastructure side, you must have heard, last week only this news has come, that Indian Railways have created a world record by successfully launching a first double stack container train. And this is going to really enhance our logistic efficiency. It is also going to enhance the cost competitiveness, the way we transport commodities through railways and so on. So this is also interesting development. And this was entirely an indigenous effort. And thanks to Indian Railways and our engineers. And I have some points to say that how well we are prepared. Our preparedness is basically reflected in terms of investment in process, investment in terms of enhancing the capability of human being, what we call it as investing in people, and investing in technology. And this is also ably supported by a variety of initiatives like our campaign of Make in India, the smart cities. This is also going to help in strengthening our supply chain. It is also going to complement our manufacturing base, the emphasis on digital India, skill India, startup India, and so on. So all these government initiatives are also going to help. But as I said, this is a huge challenge, and this challenge cannot be met by one individual entity alone. In supply chain, what we often say that every stakeholder must be on the board. Similarly, our preparedness must be coming from a collaborative effort, a joint effort, because of individual companies, because of government initiatives, because of academic institute which will give technical as well as managerial inputs, plus a very vital role to be played by industry associations and professional bodies. unless these four entities come together, we will not be in a position to counter the challenge. So I just give an example. For example, we are all aware that as far as the two-wheeler market is concerned, and it is very interesting, in 2018, India became the largest manufacturer of two-wheelers in the world, and our output is twice that of China. It's very interesting. And Indian companies have started buying out European brands. The market leader, KTM, is partly owned by Bajaj. So this is also a good example. And between these three companies, Hero, Bajaj, and TVS, India dominates the motorcycle market of the globe. And here we have really demonstrated our capability, our engineering skills, and the way we manage our supply chain. Similarly, this is also very interesting that the global accolades which are won by our companies, there is a very prestigious award called as Deming Award in Quality. And if you look at the number of companies which have won this award, Indian companies, out of 72 companies which have won this award since 2000, 32 companies are Indian. So almost 44 companies of the world are Indian as far as the Deming Award is concerned. And this is a very, very prestigious award. Japanese people are very, very demanding as far as quality is concerned. On the other hand, at the shop floor level, there is an equally prestigious award called as TPM Award. If you look at the winning companies in TPM Award, there are more than 10% of the companies which have bagged this award. So that means we are capable, we have the willingness, and we can really do this. So thanks to the industry associations like CII, FICCI, PhD Chamber of Commerce, there are professional societies like Quality Circle Forum of India, Quality Council of India. All these have invested hugely in popularizing the concept of quality, concept of 5 years, concept of preventive maintenance, and so on. So all these efforts have led, and there is a common perception that only automobile sector has got this kind of awards. It is not true. Last year, the 4 companies which have got Deming Award in India, all these 4 companies are coming from non-automobile sector. It is very interesting. So that means the message of quality has also percolated to other sector. Now the initiatives which are coming from government has initiated a program called as SAMARTH, Smart and Advanced Manufacturing and Rapid Transformation Hub. And under this, government has set up 4 centers with an objective of enhancing the competitiveness. And these centers are set up, one at IIT Delhi, IISc Bangalore, CMTI Bangalore, and C4I4, that is Center for Industry 4 Lab at Pune. Now the basic purpose of this is to popularize, to help industries to implement Industry 4.0. So Professor Alokji, last year we had this, last quarter we had this interesting conference on Industry 4.0 hosted by IMS. And basically, there is a lot of movement which is coming as far as implementation of Industry 4.0 is concerned. And this Industry 4.0 is different from what has been adopted by, let us say, European or industries abroad. So this has a huge emphasis on how do we really migrate from the traditional manufacturing base to the Industry 4.0. Or as you rightly said, overnight transformation into Industry 4.0 is not possible. But we have got the capability. For example, this Maruti, which has produced ventilator. Again, industries like Maruti, they have made full use of 3D printing in reducing the lead time. And 3D printing is nothing but one of the initiatives coming out of Industry 4.0. So there we talk about additive manufacturing, cloud computing, data analytics, a huge help coming from robotics, machine learning, and so on. So all these initiatives are strongly supported by government, and government has also come out with an interesting scheme. This is called as Lean Manufacturing Competitive Scheme, and in this they have identified, the Ministry of Small and Medium Enterprise has identified 100 mini clusters where there will be technical assistance given so that these companies can implement the principles of 5S, principles of lean manufacturing, and the way we can basically improve our shop floor, improve the inventory, and again streamline our operation. So this is very interesting scheme, which is again coming out of COVID-19 package, coming out of government. And as I said, another leg which is very important is the collaboration between academic institute. This is basically for capacity building, promoting the startup, giving technical inputs for the incubators, conducting training programs, again building the necessary technical manpower as well as managerial manpower, the way we try to implement variety of schemes, and also acting as a powerful liaison between industry and government. And similarly, industry association also acting as a bridge between government and business. For example, there are many training programs which are conducted by Quality Circle Forum of India, conducted by CII, conducted by FICCI, and so on. And these are the programs. By certification of these programs will also help us in capacity building and as well as understanding the way world is growing. And the government of India has rightly put a rider that why not we produce on our own? Do we have the capability? The answer is yes. We have the capability. We have the positive state of mind. We also have the necessary ecosystem. And if not, we can definitely develop over a period of time. And this requires a very, very strong support. And our supply chain need to be what we call it as the consumer driven demand that is going to dictate our supply chain. Similarly, the manufacturing facilities which are closer to the consumer population, and the way we try to build in the spirit of resilience into the supply chain. So from research point of view, how do we really define resilience? What are the different parameters of resilience? Can we say that we are agile? Can we say we are flexible? And so on. So this will be also a huge research challenge for our faculty as well as students. The way we have responded and the way we are going to respond in future. So this has, as I said, our supply chain also need some kind of a revisit to the traditional concept. For example, COVID has also compelled us to look at the basic concept of what is called a safety stock. Earlier, for a time being, we ignored the concept of safety stock. We thought everything was available as and when needed. But COVID has taught us a lesson. COVID has also given us an opportunity to relook at the fundamental concept of inventory optimization, fundamental concept, the way we engage in maintaining the safety stock and so on. And it has also given an opportunity to automate our supply chain. And this automation, as I said, will be coming because of Industry 4.0, because of IoT, Internet of Everything. Similarly, a huge emphasis on analytics, the way we understand our customer, the way we try to bridge linkages with the supplier and so on. Analytics will be required for each and everything. Similarly, the accounting will be aided by blockchain. Blockchain will also ease the governance. It will also bring a lot of transparency in the entire supply chain and so on. So all these solutions will be both highly automated as well as what we call it as based on the traditional systems of manufacturing as well as supply chain. So I have given you different examples like Kavach, Laltan, Maruti, Amul, and so on. And I also talked about VUCA, where V was volatile, U was uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. So that VUCA needs to be countered by giving an appropriate response, by having a good investment in technology, what we call it as virtual, also engaging ourselves into unconventional thinking, which we never thought, but it is possible. COVID has also given an opportunity to experiment ourselves. So this experimentation, exploration, basically in an unconventional manner, is also one response by which we can counter VUCA environment. And as I said, we require collaboration. We cannot work in isolation. We require collaboration between different players. We require collaboration between government and industry. We require collaboration between industry association and academic institutes and industry, and so on. And the most important, we also need to be agile and flexible. As the example has, Amul has given us a ray of hope that we are adaptable. Maruti has also given an example that a traditional four-wheeler can also actively engage in producing the ventilators, the world-class ventilator, because Maruti was adaptable. Maruti was very active on collaborative front. And our own example of Kavach. Kavach is also basically dependent on a virtual network. It is borrowing a lot of concept from Industry 4.0, where everything is connected to everything and so on. And there are different sensors which also tells about the manufacturing targets, the way quality is measured, and so on. So VUCA can be countered if we emphasize on being virtual, being engaged in unconventional thinking, being collaborative, as well as we should also be adaptable. Say that we need to look at the new supply chain model, where we borrow a lot of help from visualization and predictive capabilities, which are coming because of the digitalization as well as virtualization. Similarly, a lot of initiatives coming because of Industry 4.0 and so on. So unless we invest in this, unless we train ourselves in this, we are not going to have a good supply chain in play. Will not be able to counter the challenge. But on the positive side, we have been resilient, we have been adaptable, we have been flexible, and that resilience has really paid off. And we must resort to innovative, out of the box thinking, and by design, we must be flexible enough to counter the challenge which has been posed by COVID. For example, we must have seen this, that new hospitals, they have come up by resorting to telemedicine, and the supply chain is totally reorganized. Again, taking a heavy help from the digital media, from digitization as well as the virtual media. And then instead of physically contacting the patient, we are taking help of a very innovative solution, which is at the best highly customized, it is highly personalized, and at the same time cost effective. So similarly, the supply chain, which are going to be contactless, will try to resort a learning getting from this. And we also need to retrain our human resource, which is capable of developing such kind of solution. So as I said, virtualization of supply chain is going to be a major issue. And unless we invest in this, we'll not be able to get rich dividends, which are possible by engaging ourselves in Industry 4.0. Similarly, contactless business is possible. We have seen this by adopting to digital wallet, QR scanning, and so on. So this is also going to be the order of the day, which is going to counter the environment. So I must quote one example, there is a company called as GRP Limited. They are basically in the rework of rubber base, and this is a very interesting company. It is spread over. They have got huge supplier base, huge customer, and they export to different countries. And their general manager, Mr. Raju Modi, what he says that if India wants to be a so-called the leading star in supply chain, we must invest in automation, we must invest in Industry 4.0, and unless we leverage technology, it is not possible to lead the light. A smart decision-making process will be with the best skills, the human base which we are having, and unless they come together, will not be able to build what is called as a state-of-the-art supply chain framework, which will define India's growth, our position, and stand with pride in the global market. So this is his advice, that invest in technology, invest in Industry 4.0 solution, and so on. Now, I also understand that there are some students who are basically the potential candidates who will be joining our MBA program. And I must say that we must also enhance our soft skill. Now, this is a very interesting skill set which is required for supply chain executive. And there are different skills which have been projected. And COVID, what is going to be important? Now, this is important both for faculty as well as students. That enhancing our flexibility skills, the way we manage stress, the way we manage people, the way we encourage collaborative learning, leadership, which should be eminent, especially during this pandemic time, and our inherent skill by which we understand the complexity and we are also able to manage the change, and universal skill of negotiation. So all these skills are going to be extremely important, and now they are going to be more important post-COVID. I must suggest to the incoming batch of 2020 that you are lucky that you are seeing this once in a lifetime opportunity. The entire humanity is being affected by COVID, and this is also a good opportunity to enhance our skill base. And if we enhance our skills in this direction, I think that is going to contribute to the management education, as well as it is also going to add to our personal inventory so that we can take up the challenge. And for faculty, those who are engaging in research, so I have suggested some themes, for example, localized versus globalized supply chain. What are the pros and cons? The way we have looked at this pandemic, it is also an example of disaster and humanitarian supply chain. As I said, what is the meaning of resilient supply chain? What are the determinants of resilience? Can it be quantified? How to measure? Can we benchmark one organization against another as far as resilience is concerned, and so on? Similarly, can we also say that how do we manage different projects? Because thanks to COVID, the scope of the client is also going to change. It is going to change drastically. Earlier, UGC said something. Now UGC is saying that online learning is not going to be viable, and so on. So this is a typical situation where the scope, the requirements are going to change continuously. Moment we get more and more information, we are going to revise, and so on. So similarly, as I said, this 1,000 companies which are going to relocate. Now, can we qualify some factors for such relocation decision? These factors will be entirely different, let us say, before COVID, and there will be a huge change in post-COVID scenario, and so on. So all these areas are going to engage us in a fruitful manner, the way we are trying to counter. And please remember, the changes which are coming because of COVID, these are not business as usual changes. These are not incremental changes. this cannot be countered by what is called as continuous improvement. But this needs to be countered by a very strong force coming from our side. These are basically changes requiring huge transformation in our technology, in our mindset, and the way we look at human resource. As I said, investing in process, investing in people, and investing in technology. So unless we invest properly, this transformation change is not going to occur. And unless there is a transformation change, we will not be able to counter the challenge of COVID. Just to summarize, the example which I gave of Maruti, Larten, Amul, and Kavach, they are representing different strong points coming from 4 different mechanisms of countering VUCA, whether they are virtual or engage themselves in unconventional thinking, or they resorted to collaboration, or they also demonstrated some degree of adaptability. So this is also a general framework by which we are going to counter the challenge of VUCA. Volatility, the uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity needs to be challenged by being virtual, by engaging ourselves in unconventional thinking, by collaborating, by joining hands together. As I said, joining hands, having a very active collaboration between industry, academic institute, government, and industry association. Unless these 4 points come together, we are not going to counter the challenge of COVID. And in the process, we have to also display that we are agile, we are flexible, and we can adapt to the new normal, we can adapt to the new reality by which supply chain are going to be in place. And this Atmanirbhar is a very interesting term. Now, vocabulary has been suddenly enriched by this Atmanirbhar or self-reliant. Atmanirbhar is having a deeper meaning. Atmanirbhar also means gaining confidence, trying to leverage our expertise, and yes, we are capable of producing quality product, leveraging our huge talent base, leveraging our cost effectiveness, leveraging our supplier network, and at the same time trying to cater to the needs of the global market. And we cannot compete in the global market unless we are strong on quality, unless we produce quality product. And this is what China did. And I think we also need to do that. We need to invest, as I said, in quality. We need to invest in people, and we need to invest in technology initiatives coming from Industry 4.0 and such initiatives. And on that background, this is a very interesting development which is taking place, that there is a so-called Indo-Pacific Alliance which is likely to emerge, where India, Australia, Japan, and South Korea are likely to come. And there are going to be n number of enablers. Some of the enablers could be investment facilitating decision, for which the government as well as industry association from all these countries, they have to come together. Similarly, multi-country commercial framework has to be evolved. Some incentives in terms of common tax rules and incentives for engaging production facility here, relocating production facility here, or giving some incentives for the distribution line and so on. So this axis is going to emerge a very, very viable player in the global scenario. And I must say that there is a huge opportunity we need to encash. We need to leverage both Industry 4.0 as well as the traditional manufacturing base. And this cannot be done unless there is a good degree of collaboration between various stakeholders. And I repeat that the traditional concept of supply chain are going to be irrelevant. And thanks to COVID-19, it is also a wake-up call. It is also a call to relook at our system. It is also a call to relook at the way corporates are behaving, the way we look at our society, our social responsibility, and the way we promote localized solution. strengthen the localized base, and at the same time, on other hand, try to aspire for the global market. So as I said, the VUCA can be countered by giving new meaning to VUCA, by virtualization, by having resort to unconventional thinking, by investing in collaboration, and at the same time being adaptable in every shade of its meaning. And that is going to really dictate our new supply chain. And again, this will be evaluated by new metrics by which we can say that this supply chain is effective. This supply chain is really making some impact on society as well as business. And once again, thanks to COVID, the entire attention of supply chain will be dictated by public healthcare. And those products, the skills which we have gathered, the know-how that we have obtained, and basically the spirit of experimentation and trying to evolve different solutions is going to keep us in a very healthy and I would say productive mindset, which is going to be the agenda for post-COVID, whether it is manufacturing or supply chain. So thank you very much for your kind attention. And I think I have taken more time than was allocated to me. Thank you once again. Thank you very much.
No, sir. No, sir. Thank you so much, sir, for a very highly informative address session, which has been backed by a lot of live examples and informations, and especially the concept of VUCA, which you have addressed to us. It was very interesting. So we have a few questions on the chat box.
Sure.
If you allow me to read it.
Sure, sure.
Right, sir. Okay, I'll just move to the question side. Okay, so one question from Mr. Karan Khatri is asking possible supply chain strategies to mitigate global political instabilities, possible hyper-local supply chain strategies in this situation. Can you address some possible supply chain strategies?
Yes, supply chain strategies, as I said, this is a very, very complex problem. And supply chain cannot be on their own. Supply chain also require a lot of help and support coming from government, coming from industry association. Industry association act as a kind of a lubricant, act as a bridge by which we need to basically promote the localized solution. For example, the example which I gave of Lalten. I'm sure many of you may not be knowing the name of this organization, but it has network itself with many NGOs. It has network with the local government, and it has also network with some of the agencies which supply online solution, especially for payment and so on. So this is to be done in a collaborative manner. This is to be done basically understanding each other's requirement and then evolving a framework by which we can project this. So there cannot be a ready-made solution as such. But please understand the problem is so complex because now there seems to be a tendency that we try to blame government for each and everything. Now the problem is so complex that we have seen the world leaders like USA, Europe, they have totally collapsed because nobody has seen this kind of situation. So what it requires is sitting together, deliberating among ourselves, and then try to evolve an agenda. And this agenda, please remember, this is not going to be once for all. It is going to be evolving. See, our mindset when the lockdown started and today on 27 June, there is a huge difference because we are also learning. We are also gathering information. See, unfortunately, China did not share the database because earlier we thought that there is a great need for ventilators. Now the medical opinion had changed. Now they say that ventilators are required only in very rare situations because our understanding was different when it started, let us say in March. But today, June, we have sufficiently gathered information. Now, same thing happens with the supply chain. So as we travel, our understanding will also get refined. We also understand how the markets are going to be, who are going to be the customers, and so on. So my answer will be that this has to be done if we sit together, all the stakeholders, and then trying to understand each other.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. One more question from Dr. Abhinav Tripathi, is faculty here at IMS Ghaziabad, sir. He's asking services like tourism, real estate, and entertainment. What kind of supply chain based modification can be brought into process and practice?
Yes. Now this is very interesting. For example, just imagine cities like Agra or Gwalior or Jaipur. Part of their economy is also derived based on the tourism. And we attract a lot of tourists, both the domestic as well as people coming from abroad. Now, all of a sudden, tourism is out of gear. But again, I am happy to share with you that there are some startups which are coming into picture who are going to give a solution which is based on virtual reality and augmented reality. I need not go to Agra to see the Taj Mahal, but the augmented reality, virtual reality, the basic concepts which are borrowed from Industry 4.0, that is going to give me a good flavor of what the place looks like. It is very interesting, sir. During the lockdown period, Egypt had offered free virtual tour of some of their well-known global spots, tourist attraction. And that was done through artificial intelligence by resorting to virtual reality and artificial reality. So I think the business of tourism will be dependent on, this is a service chain. It will be coupled with a good support coming from AR or VR, artificial reality, augmented reality, or virtual reality.
Right, sir. Thank you, sir. One more question from Dr. Surbhi Singh. She's asking, how can we use the mixed reality technology for bringing transformation in our Indian service and manufacturing sector?
Now, this is a complex question. Now, the complex question requires the change of our mindset. And it requires basically good degree of sensitization, good degree of preparing ourselves, and understanding and scanning the entire environment in its totality. And unless that is done, we'll not be able to give solution to this. Yes.
Right. Thank you, sir. So one more question from a participant. He's asking, what is the major part of supply chain process from sourcing to distribution would be critical part where industries would be focusing and has better opportunities for learning from us?
Yes. Now, as I said, the typically supply chain, we say in supply chain, we call it as some supply chains are inbound dominated. Some supply chains are highly manufacturing dominated. Some supply chains are outbound dominated, and so on. For example, if you look at the supply chain of Amazon, Flipkart, they are basically geared toward the latter part, that is their outbound logistics is extremely important. Supply chain of Maruti, it is heavily based on the what happens on the manufacturing side, what happens on the operation side. Now the question is that what is the learning? The learning is basically, can we have so-called a customer-centric solution? Can we have the customer taken into confidence? And that is where the role of automation, the role of virtualization comes into picture, giving a good service feeling to the customer and engaging them in the entire supply chain. See, today what we say, whether it is manufacturing or services, in a typical manufactured product, the supply chain is not purely physical supply chain, but it is also complemented by a huge backbone of service supply chain. The way my payment process is done, the way customer complaint is being handled, and so on. So the learning will be basically coming out of this, that can we have a good contactless delivery, at the same time gaining confidence of the customer. Can we also engage, let us say, through recommendatory system, through online feedback system, by which we are constantly engaged to the customer. I think that is the learning which is going to be extremely important, and giving some kind of a assurance, some kind of a empathy, some kind of a support that we are with you. So that is going to be a new learning as far as the management of supply chain is concerned.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Sir, there are two questions from Professor Martin. His first question is, why will companies operating in China shift to India? Do we have necessary resources to provide competitive advantages available at present? Second question is, why Vietnam is getting first choice for setting up new facilities? If 1,000 companies have decided to shift to any other location, will it not bring disruption in supply chain?
Sir, I'll just intervene here. Mr. Mateen is an MBA 1978 Banaras Hindu University, and he was still recently the Vice President, Finance and Accounts, Senior Vice President at Berger Paints, which a position he served, he was with Berger Paints for around 30 years. So just a small, he's not a professor, he's a ex-industry person.
So should I repeat the question again?
Sir, can you repeat, because I'm
Yes,
not able
yes.
to hear. Yes.
Yes, sir, please. Its first question is, why will companies operating in China shift to India? Do we have necessary resources to provide competitive advantages available at present? Second, why Vietnam is getting first choice for setting up new facilities? If thousands of companies have decided to shift to any other location, will it not bring disruption in supply chain?
Yes. See, why companies will shift from China to India? Now, this is very interesting. See, when we operate in real environment, it is not only the cost advantage, but we have to also see the geopolitical situation. And what is the geopolitical situation today? Today, the entire world, China seems to have been isolated. China did not share the information. China did not basically support the facilities, or it did not arrest the spread of COVID-19. And it seems the global opinion seems to be against China. So the answer to why companies will shift to China, shift from China to India, it is not purely based on the cost. It is based on, one, our strong political system, our strong infrastructure, and law and order. And basically, there is a huge degree of transparency. See, China is a different country. Most of the things are opaque. But for a business environment, the transparency is also very important. The support from the government is also important. So maybe because of that, companies are likely to shift to India. And as I said, our manufacturing base is really strong. Our quality of human resource is really fantastic. We are one of the largest producer of S&T, human capital, in the entire globe. We have seen the wonders done by our people in Silicon Valley. Our capability is beyond question. So that could be another reason of shifting to India. And similarly, as you are right, that right now we do not have the competitive advantage, but the willingness, the political support, and a huge talent base which exists in our country. I think that is the factor, that these are the factors which are responsible for such shift. Now, why Vietnam is getting first choice? One, Vietnam is a small country. The kind of diversity which Vietnam has, very low. And Vietnam has consciously developed its manufacturing facility. See, please remember, all said and done, the huge diversity which India has, no other country in the globe has. They say that India is not a country, India is a continent. We are consisting of different countries. Every state is like a country. What happens in Maharashtra is entirely different from what may happen in Delhi. So it is like we are managing a country of 28 plus nation as a continent. So naturally, there is going to be huge diversity. And if 1,000 companies have decided to shift to any other location, will it not bring disruption in supply chain? Yes, it will. But on the positive side, what is the positive side? Positive side is that it will also stimulate the competition. It will also motivate our companies. It will also share some of the best practices which are available with these 1,000 companies. See, today, again, I repeat, today's world is not a world of living in isolation, but the world which is highly interdependent, the world which is highly collaborative, and the world which has a mindset for learning. And I think rather than looking at the so-called myopic disruption, we should look at the bigger picture, that what new knowledge, what new skills it is going to bring to our manufacturing system. I think from that point of view, we have to welcome this particular decision.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. I think we do not have any other questions, but I must tell you, sir, there are many compliments, thanks, and gratitude from all the participants, which is there on the chat box. You can check. So before we proceed to bind the session, I would like to request Professor Alok Pandey, Director IMS Ghaziabad, to say a few words. Sir, if you're listening, sir, please.
So it will be unfair for you to say that I was not listening.
No,
So with headphones on,
yes,
I was always listening, although looking here and there, because I have to be vigilant. Sitting in a chair, you know that, sir has been director for 11 years. What happens to directors when they're not vigilant? So the fact is, in fact, first of all, I express my sincere gratitude once again to sir for being here and giving a wonderfully original presentation where I saw latest citations and references from newspapers and journals and other ideas. It was a very, very original idea which sir presented. In fact, this idea of VUCA being reinterpreted from volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous to something like virtual, collaborative, adaptive, and unconventional is something our colleagues should learn. And I believe that if someone someone understands or tries to gain insight into it, it encompasses the behavior of a human being in difficult times. Probably, a collaborative spirit being, somebody asked me yesterday that do people, how do people understand change, and why do people, accept change? So I wrote to him that nobody accepts change. Change is often enforced on 90% of the times. I also believe that change actually happens due to external reasons. And of course, in a democracy, for example, which sir just said, China is a different country than India. Now what happens, the basic idea of the world is that if all of us think in a given direction, the world starts moving in that direction. And this is what happens in democracies. Now in China, I'll tell you how it works. You compare US with China, United States, they say has 2 political parties, but the policies always remain the same, no matter which party comes to power.
Yes.
In China, there is 1 political party, and the policy in last 30 years has been from high-end communism, 40 years, say Mao Zedong, partial socialism, Deng Xiaoping, and if you look at Xi Jinping, his style moving towards capitalism, right? So it's a communist state which is actually capitalist. If you look at the office of the Communist Party, it is actually located in the heart of Beijing, and you can't really see it because it is surrounded by so many towers of large companies, majority of whom come from Europe and US. So what China does or does not do, what US does or what Vietnam, Sir has wonderfully mentioned that if we become a part of South Pacific Alliance, say Australia, Japan, China, Australia, Japan, Vietnam, Taiwan kind of countries, probably it will be a great idea, and we can move forward. So I would thank Sir for such a positive, explanation of the facts. We all need to think with positivity that yes, we are going to do it. Yes, we have our own troubles, we have our own problems. We are a democracy. It becomes very difficult to enforce things in democracy. China finds it very easy to, China rules with iron hand.
Yes.
In India, you cannot rule with iron hand no matter what happens. We have seen what happened to Mrs. Gandhi when she enforced emergency in 1975. We have seen what happens to those political leaders who are seen as iron, people with iron hand or something like that. They have been forgotten. Vishwanath Pratap Singh of 1990, Advani ji of 1990s, and of course, when he was the Deputy Prime Minister, a very tough negotiator. But Indians forget everyone who rules with an iron hand. India can only be governed through a motherly affection. India can only be governed by consensus. And let me tell you, when you build a consensus, the economy goes in the right direction. And that's how I always respect Prime Minister Manmohan Singh, who actually, worked in a direction where, services sector got reformed in 1990. Now is the time when Prime Minister Modi is trying to nudge the manufacturing sector. So with all these steps which Sir has identified and told us, in collaboration with it is basically a public-private partnership kind of an idea. So if we go along with wonderful idea of Kavach, which came from IIT Delhi, the idea of auto companies manufacturing ventilators came from Japan initially and came from Italy when they had massive demand of the ventilators. But now we know that if you take dexamethasone, you don't need a ventilator. So if you take a favipiravir, you take remdesivir, you have access to some other prophylactics. Don't go for the Corona Kavach by Ramdev ji. It's not been tested, they tell us, right? But the fact is, yes, Ayurvedic remedies, Unani remedies, there are a lot number of remedies which reduce inflammation. The key to surviving Corona is reducing inflammation. So you will be spared of the ventilator. But yes, what Maruti has done is a wonderful idea. The idea of Laltain is a wonderful idea. The idea of producing 1 million masks is a wonderful idea. So I think if we go together hand in hand, if there is a strong public-private partnership and we are aligned with the South Pacific, I think we will be able to create a new supply chain and we will be able to survive not just as a nation, but will become leader over a period of time. But the only thing is, we must not lose faith in ourselves. And I think that was the underlying feature of Sir's address. So, Sir, thank you very much. I have faith in you and I have faith in my colleagues and I have strong faith in this country, which will deliver in difficult times.
Yes.
Thank you,
Sir.
sir.
Thank you very much.
Especially, sir, just one small point.
Sir.
Especially management institutes have a great role to play.
Sir.
Now, what is the role? Because we are surrounded by a huge degree of negativity around. So we as the management faculty, we must propagate the positive message. Because the human power we are developing, they are going to be the change catalyst. That's why I said this batch, incoming batch of 2020 is really lucky. Because they have seen which most of the generations have never seen. So once we see this kind of environment, once you are exposed to this environment, naturally your creativity will be at its best. So as a faculty, we must also keep ourselves tuned to reality. And rather than lamenting on each and everything, rather than criticizing each and everything, I think we must owe it to society that we are so-called belong to a very elite group and we must support society. We must help our management student to get clarity and make their own imprint in the landscape which is likely to emerge. So thank you very much, sir, for giving this opportunity and I really enjoyed.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Deshmukh sir. Thank you, Alok sir. Now over to Sai for extending the vote of thanks.
Thank you, sir. Thank you everyone for participating in this wonderful webinar, and thank you Deshmukh sir for sharing insights on supply chain and telling about situational advantages that India has. And it is heartening to see willingness and preparedness of India in global market and how Indian government has taken initiatives to strengthen the supply chain as well. So it was indeed a very informative and eye-opening session, sir. I'd also like to thank our director, sir, Professor Alok Pandey, and Dean Academics, Dr. Tapan Kumar Naik, sir, for the constant learning and encouragement. A recorded version of this webinar would also be available on request. Thank you for joining us today. Good day. Stay safe. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. Sir, namaskar.
Thanks. Thank you, sir. Thank you. All the best.
Special thanks to Mr. Mateen, who think he's vanished before I could say thanks to him, but I'll speak to him.
Right, right.
No, very valid question, sir.
Right, sir. Thank you.
Right. Sir, I'm going to end this meeting, sir. Allow me to
Thank
do
you.
this.